Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Cook Along Live. This is episode 53. We're going to be cooking some delicious looking lamb chops for Easter. Happy Easter, by the way, if you celebrate or if you observe the holiday. We're going to go ahead and get started with our lamb chops, and we have some beautiful mashed potatoes that we're going to be making that are going to go as kind of a side to the lamb chops. This is a pretty easy cook along. It shouldn't take too much effort, so if you guys want to cook along with me and you have all the ingredients, by all means, join in. If you don't have the ingredients today, I totally understand it's Easter. I'm sure you guys are all spending your time with your families. Totally understandable. By all means, I recommend you give this a shot. If you like lamb, this is a really easy, quick, lovely way to prepare it. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to get started with our potatoes. Now what we want to do is get our potatoes peeled and cut into quarters, put into our pot, and then we're going to fill our pot just to cover the potatoes with a little bit of water, add some salt, and get them cooking first. So go ahead and take your potatoes, and what we really want to do is just kind of take off our skins. Give it a really quick peel. And you'll notice I'm starting from scratch today. Wanted to kind of show you guys the full process of this, even though a lot of it is kind of not super entertaining. Just kind of show you what goes into this whole thing from scratch. Got my cat in the background playing with something. My dog investigating what the cat's playing with, so we might hear some interesting noises in the background as well. Such is a live stream. I'm going to go ahead and get off the skins. You can do the potatoes with the skins on, although if you're doing russet potatoes, I would recommend not doing it with the skins on. The reason being, russet potatoes tend to have fairly thick skins, and so it doesn't quite cook the same, doesn't quite soften the same. You actually get kind of a gritty texture while you're eating your potatoes. Not ideal. So if you're going to be making potatoes with the skins on, maybe use some red potatoes, some Yukon Golds. They tend to work a little bit better if you're going to keep the skin on, because the skins on those are much thinner. Go down a little bit easier when you're chewing on them. We're going to go ahead and keep getting the skins off. Careful, as you take the skins off, they become a little bit more slick. So just make sure you have a good hold on them as you're removing the rest of the skin. There we are, and the last one. Go ahead and just very light peel, take the skins off of this bad boy. How are you guys all doing today? I spent Easter this morning and well into the afternoon with my family at my sister's house. We are all vaccinated, so kind of fun being able to kind of hang out. Regardless of being vaccinated, we did everything outside, so nothing indoors. It was a fun Easter morning. Reminds us of back when we used to get together all the time. Fortunately, we can't really do that right now. All right, we'll go ahead and just remove the peels from the cutting board. Into the compost or garbage, if that's what you're doing. Now with our potatoes here, we're going to want to quarter these guys. So what I'm going to do is just take a paring knife here, cut these guys into quarters. So in half, kind of the wide way, and then in half again, the long way. And I'm going to put them right into my pot. Same thing with these guys over here. Cut them in half. And I'm just going to cut them in half this way as well. You want similarly sized pieces of potato. They don't have to be exact, but the closer you can get them, the more evenly they will cook. There we are. Now, we're going to put a fair amount of salt into this pot. And when I say a fair amount, I mean like 2 tablespoons of salt. I know that sounds like a ton of salt, but believe me, potatoes will not be over-salted. It's going to go into a bunch of water, and the water is going to kind of obviously dilute the salt, and the potatoes are not going to absorb all of that salt. So you want it to be a little bit saltier than you expect, because this is where you're really seasoning the potatoes. If you don't take the time to season them now, you're going to end up with kind of bland potatoes. They're going to have about 15 minutes in the water, and that's all they get. So we really want to get them kind of seasoned here. Hey, Juno. Hey, Irwan. How's it going? I am cooking lamb chops with mashed potatoes. Nice, silky, smooth mashed potatoes. Hey, Jesse. Slightly out of focus. Ooh, you're right. That's interesting. Well, I guess I could try to fix that. Give me 2 seconds. Should autofocus. Thank you for calling that out. Let's see here. I'll turn this bad boy off. You guys will get to see all kinds of fun behind the scenes things here. And that does not look like it's any better in focus. How's that? That's better. There we go. Thank you for calling that out, Jesse. When I'm cooking, I really can't take a really close look at the monitor, so I just assume everything is looking good. So excellent, excellent call on that. So all I'm going to do here is fill these potatoes up here, this pan with potatoes, just until it covers the potatoes. I don't want to fill this all the way full. I don't want to fill it like 2/3 of the way full unless you have 2/3 of a pot worth of potatoes. I really just kind of want to cover the potatoes just barely. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to walk off frame here. I don't have my sink cam set up today. Sorry. I'm going to fill this up, just kind of top it with water, and then set it on my stove over there and get it just to a simmer, like a boil simmer. We don't want this to be at a very rolling boil. We want it to be at a just gentle boil. So right now I'm over at the sink, just kind of filling up the pan with water just to cover the potatoes. I'll bring it back over to the main camera, just kind of show you guys what I mean. And then I'm going to get it on my stove top and cook it. There we go as far as the potatoes are concerned. The water is just barely covering. I've got at least, I don't know, half the pot empty. And that's what you want. You don't want to overfill this with water. You'll end up, it just takes longer to cook. It takes longer to get it to a boil. I'm only making potatoes for 1 person tonight. I mean, I'm making technically 2 portions. So if you're making for 2 or making for 4, it should be about the same. You really don't want to overfill this. So can't stress that enough. Just enough water, about 2 tablespoons of salt. If you're doing a little bit more, maybe 3 tablespoons of salt because you want to season them well. I'm going to get this on my stove over there. Just bring them up to a boil and then take them down to a simmer. And I want it to be kind of a lazy simmer. At that point, the water is at the temperature it's going to be at. It will not get any warmer. There's no reason to have it rolling. And if it's rolling, it's actually going to kind of make the potatoes break apart and disintegrate. And that's not what we want. We want to keep them together. So I'm just going to set them over here on my burner. Sorry, usually I have time to set up my sink cam. I did not have time today to set that up. So unfortunately, you'll have to just trust me that I have them on a boiler or a burner over there. And we're going to get them kind of going. They're going to be going at a simmer. All right, time to kind of prep our lamb. We're doing a very simple lamb recipe today. This is not anything that's overly complicated. It's actually a pretty easy lamb recipe. First thing I want to do is grab some salt and grab some pepper. And what we're going to do is just make sure that we season our lamb. Now, if you have any little potato shards sticking onto your lamb, go ahead and discard them. We're going to take a look at our lamb chops, and we want to find the surface that is the most flat. There's usually a flat side, and then sometimes you'll see on this one here, if I kind of turn it, you'll notice there's a little divot here where the bone kind of sticks out a bit, and the meat kind of is about a 1/4 inch below where the bone is. You guys all seeing that? When we put this down into the pan, this piece of meat, or this side of meat, is not going to lay flat against the pan. It's going to be really, really hard to get a nice sear on this side. So what we want to do is start on the side that's more uniform and more flat. So this is going to be our pan side down first. I'm actually going to start with that up. And I'm going to basically figure that out for each chop. And just make sure that I have that side of the chop up. And some of them are going to be similar on both sides. It's not going to make any difference which side is up. That's fine. But just make sure that you're taking a look and putting the flatter side down first, if there is a flatter side. Hey, Christina, how's it going? Good to see you. We're going to go ahead and put a decent amount of salt on these lamb chops. And we're going to season all sides. Basically make sure that we get enough seasoning on the flat surfaces. We're going to flip them around. Now I'm remembering here that all of the downsides are going to be the sides that I'm going to put down in the pan first. Go ahead and get that flipped. Nice and seasoned. Flip this, nice and seasoned. And flipped, nice and seasoned. I'm also going to make sure that I season the fat side. And then I'm going to take this kind of other side here, run a little bit of seasoning, but also kind of rub it on the plate to pick up any seasoning that's fallen off of the lamb. I know it looks like there's a lot of seasoning going on to these lamb chops. However, remember, a lot of this is going to evaporate. So we're just trying to get a good amount of flavor here before we get these bad boys in the pan. You'll also notice that I'm basically using my right hand for the actual seasoning and my left hand for moving the lamb around. That way I've got one kind of dirty hand and one clean hand, or one wet, one dry. And that's really what you want. Awesome, Christina, you going to Disney World? That's fantastic. I got one shot for Pfizer vaccine already. And on April 28th, I'm going to go and get shot number 2 for my birthday this year. I'm hoping to make it down to Southern California, go to Disneyland. I think that would be a lot of fun. We'll see, though. Tickets are not quite on sale yet, so I'm keeping an eye out for that. All right, time for some pepper. Again, I'm just going to kind of flip these guys over. And then just make sure that I get some pepper on the fat side as well. And there we go. Hopefully everybody's having a great Easter. Again, I had a wonderful kind of morning/afternoon over at my sister's place. All of us have been vaccinated with at least one shot. Everything was held outdoors. We had plenty of space between us. We were 6 feet or more. But we had a little bit of an Easter kind of gathering with sister, stepdad, mom, and brother-in-law side of the family as well. So mother-in-law, stepmother-in-law, stepmother-in-law, stepfather-in-law. A lot of fun. And the kids. So my niece and nephew-in-law, I think. Gee. I'm not very good at this genealogy family stuff, but it was a great morning. I've had a couple of mimosas, maybe some whiskey, and maybe some wine. So if I seem a little disjointed, that might be why. I'm going to go check on my potatoes really quick and see if they're at a simmer yet. If they are, I'm going to turn them down and just make sure that they maintain that simmer. I don't want it to be too much of a rolling boil. If it boils too fast, your potatoes will actually disintegrate. I know I've already mentioned that on this stream already. Just reiterating it. Make sure that it's at a light simmer. And we are right there, so I'm actually going to turn my heat down a bit and try to kind of maintain that simmer. Perfect. Got some beautifully seasoned lamb chops over here. Next step, I want to take some dried thyme. Just kind of give your spice container a little bit of a shake. What it does is kind of any aromatics that are in the thyme will kind of waken up a bit, especially if you haven't used it in a while. And we're going to go ahead and sprinkle this just over the top. And I think in the recipe I say about a tablespoon. It's really as much as you like. If you really like the flavor of thyme, add more. If you don't really like the flavor of thyme all that much, don't add so much. Or omit it completely if you'd like. I'm going to put a little bit of thyme on. We're going to take that. Hey, Strongish. Yeah, I'm in California, actually, in the United States. Great question. It's a beautiful day over here, about 70 Fahrenheit. Let's see, I think that's like 24-ish Celsius. You might want to fact check me on that. I'm not great at that conversion, but I think that's pretty close. And what I'm doing is any of the thyme that's kind of fallen off onto the plate, after I've kind of tapped off the side that I've put it on, I'm just kind of rubbing the other side and the fat cap down onto the plate to pick it up. I want seasoning and herbs on all sides of these lamb chops. Now, I'm missing a little bit on that side. That looks good. That looks good. That looks good. So I'm going to add a little bit more just to the bottom of this chop. There we go. And we'll just make sure that everything's kind of pressed in and looking well. That looks good. This one looks good, and that looks good. Awesome. Yes, absolutely, Christina. Lots of smiley faces and lots of champagne. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a cast iron skillet. And I'm going to get this going at like a medium-high heat. I find that a lot of people tend, and myself included, so I'm not throwing shade at anybody, but a lot of times we hear people say, get the pan ripping hot, and we overheat the pan, and we end up burning the surface of whatever it is we're cooking. I think when people say get the pan ripping hot, they really just mean, just make sure it's preheated. I wanted it like a medium-high heat. I don't necessarily need it smoking or 1,000 degrees or anything like that, but I do want it warm. I definitely want it to be hot enough that when I put these lamb chops in, or whatever meat I'm cooking, whatever protein I'm cooking, we get a nice healthy sizzle. But if you have it too hot, you're actually going to burn your meat. You're going to burn the herbs that you have on the outside. Not ideal. So get it hot. Make sure it preheats. We don't want to put anything into a cold pan. You're not going to get very much color on your meat that way, or your protein, whatever it is you're cooking. But you do want to make sure that this preheats adequately. Now, that is kind of a subjective thing, and it's really, really kind of trial and error. I like to say, like, turn it on medium heat, cook something. If it doesn't brown enough, next time, just turn it up a little bit. If it overcooks, or if it, like, burns, turn it down just a bit. You're really going to kind of figure out what that means on your particular cooktop. And that's what you want to cook when somebody says, get the pan ripping hot. I find that, generally speaking, like a medium heat works really well for me, medium high. And I'll actually adjust while I'm cooking based on what I see the protein doing. So before we put this into the pan, what I'm going to do is just make sure that I double check and see that my flat side is the one that is up. That way I know that that's the side that I'm putting down first. And again, if you have a side like this piece where you've got like a quarter of an inch of like a divot here in between where the meat is and the bone, you know that this side is not going to touch the surface of the pan. It's not going to brown very well. So what I want is the side that is most uniformly flat, so when I put it into the pan, it sears. The entire surface of that side sears. And then that's going to also be our presentation side. So that's the first surface that we want to put in. And then when we flip it, the second side, okay, cool. If it browns, great. If it doesn't brown perfectly, that's fine. We can just flip it and put it down on the plate. No one will notice until they eat the food. And then the food tastes great. But it looks amazing. And really, if the food looks great, it's going to taste even better. I'm going to take a quick look at my potatoes simmering away. I'm going to turn down the heat just a bit. Hey Siri, set a timer for 10 minutes. And now in my pan over here, what I want to do, I'm actually going to use some extra virgin olive oil. Now I've got this heating at 375, so that shouldn't burn the extra virgin olive oil, because I believe that that is below the smoke point. I'm actually going to turn it down to 350. Let's take a look. All right, we got some nice shimmering going in the oil. And let me see if I can do this kind of a thing. So you guys can see the oil is coating the bottom of the pan. It's getting nice and viscous, which is what you want. When the oil goes into the pan initially, it's going to be fairly thick. It's not really going to want to coat the bottom. But what we want to do is make sure that it gets nice and viscous, so you get that nice kind of shimmer. We're getting just a little bit of smoke, and I'm actually going to switch this like so. So you guys can see that a little bit better. We'll see just a little bit of smoke coming off the pan. And I'm sorry about the reflection of that light. Nothing I can do about it. What we want to do here is we're going to actually take our lamb chops and put them in flat side down. Hey, Mom, how's it going? Strongish, my favorite dish is actually tabbouleh and tacos. So two of my favorites. My favorite thing to make is probably beef Wellington, which I did for Christmas. So if you go and take a look at my cook-along playlist, I've got a beef Wellington episode there. And that's a lot of fun to make. A lot of work, but worth it in my opinion. So we got our oil heated up here. We're going to go ahead and take our lamb chops, and we're just going to set them in and just give them a nice little kind of press into the pan. We want that sizzle. You guys can see that it's sizzling. You guys can probably hear through my mic that it's sizzling. That's what you want. You don't need it to be spitting all over the place. That means your pan is too hot. But you do want a nice sizzle. We're going to do that with all of our chops here. And we're just going to arrange them around the middle of the pan. And you'll notice what I did with this one right here is there's actually kind of a dry spot in the pan right here. I guess you can barely see it right there. I actually took the piece of lamb, put it into some of the oil, and then slid it over onto the dry spot just to make sure that it's coated with something. And then last one, we're going to do the same kind of thing and just kind of sidle it in there. Now I'm going to give all of these a nice press into the pan just to make sure that they're all in contact with the hot surface. And I'm going to take this over to my sink. And at this point, I'm going to rinse off my wet hand or my dirty hand from all of the lamb. And by rinse, I mean use some dish soap to wash it. And usually, like I said, I have a sink cam set up over here so I can talk to you guys while I'm doing this, but today I did not have enough time when I got home to set that up. So I apologize for that. All right, there we go. Awesome, Christina, fully vaccinated. I'm also kind of reading back through some of the back chat here, so give me a second. Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Jesse, for giving me that overhead coaching, I suppose. All right. So, we got our food over here cooking. We're going to let this kind of sizzle, and this is going to take about 5 minutes. We don't have it at a very high heat, but that's fine because we actually want it to cook through and brown. If you have this too hot, you're actually going to burn the surface of whatever it is you're cooking. It can be mushrooms, it can be steak, it can be lamb, it can be chicken, it can be fish, whatever it is. If your pan is too hot, you're going to burn the outside of the meat or the protein before it has a chance to cook through. Same thing with like grilled cheese sandwiches. I don't know if you guys have ever made a grilled cheese. We, again, have an episode on that here on the channel. If you put the pan too hot, you're going to burn the bread before the cheese has a chance to melt. And so, not ideal. It's really, really good to kind of take the bread, put it in a maybe cold pan or a cooler pan, slowly warm things up so the cheese has a chance to melt. Same thing with the center of this lamb. We're trying to kind of obviously get a sear on the outside so it looks wonderful, but also we want to cook it most of the way through. And if you just kind of throw it into like a ripping hot 1,000-degree pan, you're going to burn the outside of whatever it is you're cooking before it has a chance to cook through. So just kind of be cognizant of that and play around with it. We're getting a little bit of the sizzle here kind of toning itself down. I'm actually going to turn the heat up just a bit. I'm going to move these guys around just to see if I can get a little bit more activity. Perfect. Awesome. So we're good with that. let's switch back to this. I'm going to take my clove of garlic here, and I want about 6 to 8 good-sized cloves. I'm just going to go ahead and take off the top of the paper here. And I'm going to push this gigantic head of garlic against my cutting board to kind of loosen things up. And I'm going to take my nail or my fingers and peel things apart. And what I want, let's see, get all this paper kind of out of the way. And we got some smaller pieces of garlic. And we got some decent sized pieces of garlic. So let's say like 3. Nope, that one's on the ground. No, dog, that's not for you. Hey, go away. 4. Oh. See, this is multiple pieces. I'm going to set that aside. This looks like 2 cloves, 3 cloves. Ooh. So there's 4, 5, 6, 7 small cloves. I'm going to keep the small cloves and use them in something else. For this, I really want some larger cloves. So 4, 8. There's 9. That'll work. This is really up to your personal taste. If you like garlic, great, add more. If you don't like garlic, don't use as much. I happen to love the flavor of garlic, especially when it goes with lamb. So I'm going to use a little bit more than what the recipe calls for. Easiest way to remove the skins, take the garlic, take the flat side, or like the I guess concave or the convex side, whichever side you want. As long as it's kind of laying flat and has a curve either on the top or on the bottom. Either way. Take your knife and just give it what I call a love tap. It'll flatten the garlic a little bit and make the skin come right off. In this case, if you slam it and break it in half, it's fine. You can give it a nice light little love tap. If it doesn't quite come off, give it a little bit more of a heavy-handed one. And that should make these skins come off nice and easy. There's also the bowl trick, where you can take your garlic, put it in between a couple of metal bowls, shake it back and forth like the Dickens until the skins come off. That works too. Although I find that better if you're doing like an entire head of garlic. For, you know, a couple of cloves, not worth it to get 2 bowls out. There we go. There's 4. And then you'll really kind of get a feel for this the better, or the more I should say, the more you do it. You'll get a feel for when you've kind of cracked the garlic enough to get the skin off. Don't worry about the root so much at this point. Nope, and that was a couple of different cloves. We're not going to be eating the garlic with the lamb, so the root itself being attached doesn't matter so much. We really just kind of want to get this into the oil to give it a nice subtle garlicky flavor. And there we go. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and take these guys and kind of sprinkle them in through the pan here. Careful when you're working with hot oil. I'm just going to do that with the rest of these guys. Just kind of give them a couple of taps. Peel off the skins into the pan. Notice that we're letting this garlic kind of sit in here for a while, and that's fine. We have it at a lower heat. We're not burning the surface of the skins, or the meat. We're giving it a chance to kind of cook through as well as brown. Hey Siri, stop the timer. Potatoes are just about ready. Go ahead and get that in there. Now what I'm going to do is take kind of the first one that I put in and turn it around, and that looks pretty well browned. So I'm going to go ahead and turn them all around. And that looks pretty good as well. And that one. And all of these guys look really well done. I'm going to go ahead and kind of press them again back into the pan. Careful, the surface of the meat is hot. It just came off of the pan. But you'll notice that it's browned, and if you look at the thyme is still kind of green. It's not burned. We don't have black specks all over our lamb chops. So that's exactly what we're looking for. And you'll also notice that the fat on the outside is not cooked. So we're going to get to that. But what we really want to do is kind of give the surface enough time to brown before we get to that. I'm going to take my garlic and just kind of run it around the outside of the garlic, or the lamb chops here. And what I'm doing is kind of flavoring the oil. I'm going to let this go. My timer was set for my potatoes. So what I'm going to do is kind of clean off my cutting board here real quick. I'm going to go and check on my potatoes. And what I'm going to do is take my paring knife, push it through each potato, and just see if there's any kind of resistance as I'm pushing it. If it goes right through the potato and comes back out, perfect, they're done. If it has any kind of like resistance where I really need to kind of push on it to get it through the potato, I'm going to let it go for maybe another 2-3 minutes so the potato is cooked through. So give me a sec, I'll be right back. Again, usually I have a sync cam set up over here so you guys can kind of follow along with me, but today, unfortunately, I didn't have time to set that up. And these guys are perfect, so I'm going to come back to my cutting board over here and show you kind of what I mean. If I take my knife, I'm literally just kind of sliding it into the potato with very little force at all. Like the weight of the knife went through the potato. And that's perfect. So if I just take my knife, I'm not going to push down at all. If I just kind of set it on the potato here and let it fall, it's going all the way through the potato down to the bottom. So that is what I want. That means the potatoes are cooked. Since we had this at a nice gentle simmer, none of my potatoes have fallen apart, which is great because I don't have a bunch of starch floating around in my water. I've got some nice, well-cooked potatoes. Potatoes I'm going to take to my sink, rinse them off, not rinse them off, but drain them in a colander here, and then bring them back into a nice steel mixing bowl. And we're going to go ahead and get these guys mashed. So 2 seconds while I do that. I will be right back. Again, apologies. Usually I have my sync cam. And today, I've had a little bit too much going on. And that is kind of the fun of doing a live stream. There we go. Nice potatoes. You can see even on the colander, I've got some nice fluffy potatoes kind of there, but they're not in the water, which is perfect. There's a lot of steam coming off the potatoes, which is perfect. I'm going to let them kind of steam away. I'm going to take about 4 tablespoons, so like a half of a stick of unsalted butter, about like so. And I'm going to cube this up just a bit. Doesn't have to be super small or anything like that. I just want to make sure that it melts kind of evenly. There we are. And work with this pretty quickly because the heat from your hands is actually going to start melting the butter. And then what I want to do is kind of break this butter up into the potatoes. And then we're going to mash everything together. There we go. And before, I guess I'm going to mash it like this first. Now the heat from the potatoes should melt the butter. And the butter is going to incorporate with the potatoes, which is what you want. You want the starchy and the fatty kind of coming together. If you have some chives, I don't today, but if you do and you want to add them at the end, you're just going to kind of chop them up finely and put them in after you're done mashing. Otherwise, what you're going to do is actually mash the chives into the potato, and it just changes the chive a little bit. So add them at the end, stir them in or fold them in. You'll have a much better time. We're going to go ahead and add some milk to this at this point. About a 1/4 cup. And we're just going to kind of stir this to begin with. And then mash it in. And make sure you're using whole milk. You want a nice fatty milk. And there we go. Mashed potatoes are basically done. Again, at this point, if you're adding chives, go ahead and coarsely chop them and stir them in. I'm going to give this a little taste just for seasoning. Now, with that salt that I added into the water, these should be seasoned perfectly or pretty close. Perfect. I'm just going to set these aside for now. That is yummy. All right, let's go ahead and flip our lamb. We're just going to check this other side. Everything here looks brown, which is perfect. We'll switch over here. Here's the other side of the one piece. All of these look nicely browned on the second side. So what we're going to want to do now, I'm actually going to turn everything up onto the bone. Kind of get a good little bit of color on the bone. That won't take very long, maybe about a minute or two. And then we're going to flip it down onto the fatty side. Cream cheese is a great option. Absolutely. You can definitely do that. It adds a little bit more of a creamy texture to it, obviously, as it melts in. You may want to play around a little bit with the milk if you're adding cream cheese as well, because you can add too much fat and actually split the potatoes, which I don't like it. I'm sure some people do. But it's very similar to like making a hollandaise. You can actually break the potato. Not ideal. But for now, I'm just going to kind of let those go. We're going to give this about another minute or two, and then we're going to put it down on the fatty side. And then we're pretty much done. Let me grab a plate so we can plate this. I'm going to grab one of my fancy pants plates. There we are. And what I like to do with the potatoes, this is totally optional and slightly wasteful. So if you don't like wasting plastic bags or piping bags, maybe don't do this. But when I am doing potatoes, I love to take a Ziploc or a piping bag or whatever. Fill the Ziploc bag with potatoes, and I'll show you what I do. Go ahead and get these guys in here. Awesome, Dad. Yeah, not so much garlic. It really kind of depends. Again, I'm not going to get a very heavy garlic flavor. I'm not going to eat the garlic with the lamb chops. I'm just going to use that. It's basically just flavoring the oil. So there's like a hint of garlic in the lamb chops, but it shouldn't be overpowering or anything. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my lamb, flip it over onto the fat side. And when I flip it over on the fat side, I'm going to make sure that they stay standing. So they usually tend to kind of fall over one direction or the other. I'm going to make sure that they kind of fall towards each other, so they kind of prop each other up. And up on the fat. And again, just kind of give it a little press into the pan. And then at this point, I might actually turn it up just a bit because I want a good sear on that fat cap. Now let's get back to our potatoes. So I've got my potatoes in a plastic bag, in a Ziploc, in a piping bag, whatever. I'm going to go ahead and kind of squeeze everything towards one of the corners. Down like so. So I'm just going to clip off the end, and then I can very, very easily place the potatoes on the plate. And I'm going to make this a pretty large cut because I don't need this to be technical or intricate, I should say. I just want to put a nice dollop of potatoes down on the plate. So here we go. There's a serving of potato. Again, if you're using chives, you can maybe sprinkle a little bit of fresh chive right over the top. I'm getting quite a bit of smoke out of our lamb volcano over here. Go ahead and take a look at one of the fat caps. And that looks nice and brown. And that one does too. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the heat. Everything here looks wonderful. And then for this plate, I'm going to find the 2 pieces of lamb that I think look the best. Grab one of them. I'm going to go ahead and put one on this side, like so. You just kind of press it into the potato. And then maybe grab one of the ones that's not browned so well, if you have one. Go for this guy right here. And then the way that I plated it for the Instagram shot, by the way, if you don't follow me on Instagram, I post all of the recipes the week before the cook-along. I'm going to go ahead and kind of carve the meat. Sorry about my dog. Going to carve my meat off of the bone here. Hey, calm down. There's nobody out there. And then just give this a couple of slices right down the middle. Time for me to sharpen my knives. There we go. I'll take this piece, put it down as kind of a scaffolding, I guess, for the other pieces. Cut out this piece, do the same kind of a thing, maybe right there. And then put one of the smaller ones down first. And it's a pretty fatty fat cap. So on this one here, it looks like I'm just going to get the 2 pieces. And then maybe like so. And then there we go. Wipe off any of the juice from the plate. Now, I'm going to let this kind of sit for a second. Let me grab these other pieces of lamb chop off of the skillet. Let's set those aside and let them rest. Got a beautiful amount of fond here on the bottom of the pan. What I'm going to want to do is actually take a lemon. I'm just going to kind of cut off the cheeks of the lemon. Pro tip, this is a great way to kind of cut a lemon so that you don't get any seeds. So if you're taking a look here, no seeds in the cheeks. None there, none there. And I'm going to make a quick pan sauce. Now what I'm going to do, take about a tablespoon of butter, my lemon here, and I've got a ton of garlic in the pan. With the heat off, I'm just going to stir my garlic around a bit. Let's get this on medium heat maybe. Take our lemon, squeeze a bit right into the pan. Drop the lemon into the pan if you want. Both cheeks in. There we go. Nice little stir with our tongs, or if you have a wooden spoon, or if you're using cast iron, feel free to use a whisk. And then we're going to toss our pat of butter in and just melt it in. And at this point, we're going to turn off the heat. Just get it stirred in for a nice rich pan sauce. You see how that kind of turned into a nice shiny brown, which is what we want. And now, grab a little spoon. And my pan is hot, so I'm going to use my dish towel to kind of hang on to it. Move things over. And I'm going to go ahead and spoon some of the sauce over the lamb. A little bit over the mashed potatoes. It's kind of a gravy. And there we go. All right. Happy Easter, everybody. Lamb chops with some silky, beautiful mashed potatoes. All done. I'm going to kind of clean off the plate with the towel. Switch back over here and show you my handiwork. And you too can make a beautiful dish like this in no time at all. About 45 minutes for today's live stream. So got some beautiful mashed potatoes, beautiful lamb, cooked, in my opinion, perfectly. I like mine a little bit more medium. And done. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I wanted this. Hey, everybody. All right. So lamb chops done, mashed potatoes done. Beautiful, simple, pretty quick to make dish. I know that we've been live streaming for about an hour, but take away 10 minutes from the kind of pre-roll. And if you're actually doing this without talking about how to make it, it goes a little bit quicker. I actually put this together when I did my tester earlier in the week. It took me about 35 minutes. So you can put this together very quickly, and it's a beautiful dish, absolutely stunning, tastes amazing, and I hope you guys give this a try. Let me know. If you guys follow me on Instagram or follow me on Facebook or on YouTube, by all means, take a picture of what you make, send it to me. I would love to see what it looks like, because the whole point of this channel is, or the whole point of this series, I should say, is to try to inspire you guys to cook your own amazing dishes at home. So I hope you guys have a wonderful Easter. Next week, I'm not quite sure what we're making yet, but again, follow me on Instagram and you guys will get the recipe. You'll see a preview of what it should look like when we're done. And hope to see you again soon. Hope you guys have a wonderful holiday, and I will talk to you guys next week on another Cook Along Live. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody, and happy Easter. Goodbye.